Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
This episode is brought to you by Welch's Fruit Snacks. Back to school season can be tough on parents, but choosing a snack you and your kids can both get behind doesn't have to be. Stock up on Welch's Fruit Snacks, made with whole fruit, and now made with no artificial dyes. It's a snack kids already love, and one you can feel good about giving them. Go back to school with Welch's Fruit Snacks, now made with no artificial dyes.
Hi, my name is Dan. I'm a presenter of the Cardiff Central podcast. If you're new tuning in for this season, I'll shortly be joined by Andrew Ford and Steve Coombs. But just quickly to say, as it is pre-season, it's our first pod back. We did have a few technical difficulties trying out a bit of a different software. So the recording that we did, we lost a little bit of the first part of the pod. So just to set the scene of what we're about to go in and discuss, we were talking about the news that's happened across the off-season and just summarising the comings and goings as we last recorded in early June, so about 2.5 months before coming back now. There was a few contract extensions, a couple of new signings, a departure and a bit of coaching change. So the list of those that happened since that final podcast of last season, the contract extensions were Aled Davis, Ellis Bevans, Sam Wainwright, Rory Thornton, George Knott and Talupe Faletau. New signings were Samisi Paya, Tongan international from Moana Pacifica, and Jared Evans, a familiar name to us at Cardiff, of course, coming back from Harlequins. After that signing of Evans, Harry Wilde was loaned out to the Ospreys for the season to play fly half there. And coaching-wise, we welcome Lee Halfpenny full-time as kicking and skills coach after his retirement at the end of last season, and Dan Bowden, a guy who's been around the block a bit playing-wise and coaching, has been at Auckland, Toshiba Brave Lupus, and most recently assistant coach of the Japan national team. We touched on the extensions, just confirming that it's good to bolster the squad, and that Talupe Faletau, whilst obviously we haven't seen too much of him, the general consensus would say it's good to get him back as a big player, obviously world-class when he's fit, and that perhaps the WRU have had a little hand in that, looking ahead to the 2027 Rugby World Cup, and if they can get him there in one piece, then they may well be considering taking him on the plane to Australia. We'd also touched on Samisi Paya as coming in perhaps as a straight replacement for Ben Donald, although more of a back rower than a second row. At this time, he's played a lot of 7 for Moana Pacifica and for Tonga, but that probably linked a little bit more to the way they're set up and the fact they've got a lot of 6s, a lot of 8s, and they don't really play with an out-and-out open side flanker, so we expect to see him a little bit more at 6 and then possibly at 4 if required. But we'll pick our recording back up where we get into discussing Jared Evans and all the fly halves we've currently got at the club. The other new signing, of course, this off-season, Jared Evans, player who came through our academy and spent many years with us before heading over to Harlequins, now comes back. Steve, coming back to you again, just on Jared, I suppose, just on him individually, like, good signing, bad signing?
I mean, purely on his ability to play rugby, it's a terrific signing. He's a player I always really enjoyed watching in his first stint here. And purely on that basis, it's great to see him back. He's still a fantastically entertaining player to watch. He suits the way we play very well. And now he might suit the way we play even more because I think he can slot into that second playmaker role at 12. And I think there's been hints that they will use him there. So purely on a rugby basis, I think it's a good idea. Everyone will say we need a second row more, and yeah, we do. We definitely do. But they have said that they're still looking for second rows. So I don't think the signing of Jared kind of is necessarily blocking the signing of a second row. I To me, it's a good idea.
You mentioned about the second playmaker there. Like, we saw him, I think, very briefly at 12 in his first stint. I seem to remember him playing against Saracens there.
Yeah, he played 12 against Saracens, didn't he? Because I don't know, I think John Mulvihill, I'm pretty sure he said that his dream midfield partnership was Jared at 12 and Owen Lane at 13. So maybe he thought for Saracens away, I would probably lose this anyway. Let's just, throw caution to the wind, play Jared at 12, like make all my dreams come true. I think he has played there at Harlequins as well. And he seemed, I don't know, maybe it's just a TV thing, but he looks to me like he's bulked up a bit while at Harlequins. I don't know if you feel the same way. So maybe he's that much more able to play there. But I mean, the big criticism of Jared as a 10 has always been, and well, we know what Tony would say if he was here, is that he doesn't necessarily get much range from his line kicking. I think with the way we play now, with the second playmaker option, it could sort of balance out that slight weakness because you could either have Ben Thomas playing 12 alongside him, which I don't think he actually happened too often in Jared's first stint because that was still the Willis Hollow period. Or you could play him at 12 with Sheedy or Ewan Lloyd alongside him. So it's maybe like the negative side of having Jared in the team is balanced out a bit more now. So I think it'll work out as a really good move for us. And as for I mean, people mentioned the thing that this forces Harry Wild out on loan. I don't think that's actually a bad thing because if you can imagine that we hadn't signed Jared Evans, Harry Wild would still be in a position where he's waiting for either Sheedy or Ewan Lloyd to get injured before he can come in. So he could quite easily just spend another year playing Super Rugby Cymru, which probably wouldn't be great for him because I think he's moved beyond that. And it also wouldn't be great for Lloyd Lucas because I think Lloyd Lucas could probably use a year being the first choice Rags 10. So I think it's a good idea all around.
Well, just on Jared's move from Jared's perspective, I suppose, obviously, as Steve said, I think general perception from Cardiff fans is that great to see him back. We all know what a great, exciting player he is. But you kind of look around Welsh rugby and you see Cardiff and we've got Sheedy and Lloyd and Wild on the way through. And then you looked at some of the other Welsh sides and you thought he could probably start in at least two of the others, especially with, and then you add on Costello's injury record at Scarlets, there'd be a lot of time there. Edwards away with Wales, a lot with Ospreys. I think he almost certainly starts at the Dragons. So is it a strange move from that perspective for him to come back to Cardiff?
Yeah, it is a bit strange. I think if you look at it, that on paper, Jared's consistently been called up by Wales. He kind of effectively walks into the Cardiff team as the first choice 10 by that logic, obviously completely different in practice. But I do think at the same time, I'd have absolutely hated it to see him lining up for any of the other Welsh sides from a selfish point of view. So as much as there's been a lot of criticism with kind of now we've got Sheedy, Ioan Lloyd and Jared Evans on the books. Where does Ioan Lloyd now become more of a utility back as well option? There's a lot of questions there. I am a little bit gutted Tony's not on because he'd have offered a complete devil's advocate view. And but we might have been here for hours, so probably a blessing in disguise. But yeah, I do agree with Steve on the whole Harry Wild thing, that it might do him a world of good, going out on loan and kind of being exposed to that environment at the Ospreys that he might not have had as much of a exposure to at Cardiff, with now 310s available each week. But it'll be interesting to see as well that he's still going to be available for the Rags, how that kind of works in practice. But yeah, Jared Evans is a pretty exciting player, so definitely happy to have him at Cardiff.
Yeah, I think I agree with the points you make about what good for Wild going on loan, getting out of the Cardiff bubble a bit. Obviously, it's all he's ever known, coming through the academy here and into the Rags, and I think especially the Ospreys, because they're so different in the way that they play from Cardiff. Just having that look at a different system will be good for him. I think just looking ahead slightly though, the club will then need to make a big decision potentially next summer, because I think Evans is likely to still be contracted. The question, I think, is if Wild goes well at the Ospreys and you look at him and think, okay, he's ready to play now, they might have to be brave and move on from Sheedy at that point, so that Wild has an opportunity to come in and actually play for us. Because if he has a stint at the Ospreys, plays, I think we'll see him a fair bit. Edwards, like I said, is with Wales a lot and played a lot of minutes for the Ospreys. They won't want him to play that many minutes again. As the WRU also won't want that ahead of a World Cup year, I'd have thought. We don't know too much about this Lawson Creighton they've brought in, but some of the reports from Australia are a bit mixed about his ability. I think at 10, it's fair to say. So there will be game time there. But then if he gets that and then comes back and we've still got Sheedy and Evans there, he then thinks, well, what's for me here at Cardiff a little bit, I think. So yeah, that's my only concern, is I hope we're just not kicking the can down the road of him leaving, and at some point we will make a brave decision and get him into the squad somehow. But having depth in 10 is not a bad thing at all either. We've seen a couple of times we were perilously close to an injury crisis there, and having to move people in and out. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that goes, but hopefully he does get a good amount of game time at the Ospreys. And yeah, if I'm a Dragons fan, I'm spewing a bit that Jared hasn't signed for us, because they were crying out for a starting 10 and he goes straight in there. But as a big Jared Evans fan, and he is somebody who can get supporters in by himself, really, with the way that he plays. We covered the Wild leaving there a bit. Onto the coaching staff, Steve. Dan Bowden, I know we discussed it a bit when he was announced, that probably not a name that has come across our radars particularly, but you kind of look down his CV and there might be a little something there that the Cardiff can use.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said numerous times last season, are we lacking a bit on the coaching front in terms of having a full-time attack coach? And so I suppose I was expecting us to appoint someone, but with a sneaky suspicion that we just promote Dan Fish. So for someone to come in with actually quite an impressive pedigree, that's quite exciting, because obviously he knows New Zealand rugby, that's a given, but he spent a lot time playing in England, so he knows Northern Hemisphere rugby, and he spent a lot of time in Japan, working as Eddie Jones's attack coach. And Eddie Jones is known for being innovative, and certainly his Japanese side continues to be innovative. So for his attack coach to be coming into Cardiff is quite an exciting prospect, and it could be the most important signing we make.
Yeah, I just think stylistically, Japan, a national team that doesn't have a huge pack necessarily ever. They're not renowned for that huge platform, but they are renowned for pace of play and their skill and the way they move the ball. And I think that's probably quite a good summary of Cardiff as well over the last few years.
I suppose the question what you'd have would be, does he want to stick more or less with what Matt Sherrod has put in place and Johnny Goodridge has put in place, and then work within that and make incremental changes to it or tweak it? Or does he come in and say, no, I want to do my own thing? And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You kind of think, well, if he wants to completely change things, that might make for a slow start to the season, but a better end to the season, possibly. or maybe he just thinks, oh, this is a great system, I can work within it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see which way he goes.
Fordey Lee Halfpenny then full-time kicking and skills coach. I saw Griff Rees on the age grade and academy Twitter putting up a picture of him chatting to a couple of the youngsters in the academy as well out on the Arms Park. I mean, like, you can do as many coaching badges as you want, but there's not much replacement for that level of experience, is there?
No, not at all. And I think you saw it as well just last season, how much respect he commands, even when he was playing last. Obviously, also a part-time kicking coach, but there's so much respect towards him from all the players that having someone like that on the coaching ticket, yeah, you can't really compare that to kind of your classic molded kicking coach and skills coach. So I think that's huge to kind of keep him at Cardiff after his retirement. There were kind of rumours of him joining with Wales. Obviously, he's gone away with Wales before as kicking coach. So yeah, I think it's huge to have him involved, and the amount of experience he has. It's such a good player that I think back to with the playoffs of going to Stormers away. You don't have many players in the Cardiff squad that have experience of playing proper knockout rugby, whereas Halfpenny there does have experience of playing knockout rugby with Cardiff. And yeah, you don't really get people like that on the market quite as easily, do you? So yeah, happy to have Halfpenny about. And just reminds me of when Xavier Rush came on as a coach after he retired. I think one of the first pre-season games, he was inundated by kids just wanting autographs from him as opposed to some of the players. I imagine we'll see a repeat of that next season with people gagging for Halfpenny's autograph.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think that coaching ticket is, obviously spent a season a bit up in the air, really, with Van Zyl as interim and no obvious attack coach. But I mean, don't want to go full praising our current owners and stuff. But I think the guys on the ground at the club have moved very quickly to sort that out. And it's good that, I think we've seen even pre-union ownership that Cardiff have let elements of that could, like, sorting out coaching tickets and stuff, drag on far too close to the season. So to get that all in place for pre-season, hopefully we will reap some benefits of that as the season gets underway. I think that's pretty much it in terms of the news of players and coaches coming and going. Obviously, Steve, you mentioned a bit earlier though that the club have said they're still looking for a second row. So I don't think we feel like it's totally done and dusted yet, recruitment wise. But is there anywhere else in the squad you look at and think, should we find a money tree somewhere at the back of the ground that we could like to bring somebody in?
I mean, second row is the priority. Other than that, I think you probably want to add at least one more player in the front row. I mean, either a loose head or a tight head, depending on where Joe Cowell's going to play, because I'm not sure if he's a tight head or a loose head these days. Might be tricky finding a decent, reliable, Welsh qualified tight head around at this point. But I think you really need four guys either side of the scrum in your main squad, and we're a little short there. Other than that, maybe another back rower, purely because Tarubi Falatau will obviously either be injured a lot or will be managed, or both. So maybe we could use a bit more there. But no, I think other than those places, the squad is in a really good place.
Yeah, Joe Cowell currently fourth choice Lucid and fourth choice tight head, which could be a slight issue at some point. He's going to be busy as a travelling reserve. Anyway, I know that for certain. Fordey, anywhere jump out at you squad wise that you'd like to boost if possible?
I do agree with Steve. I think Johan Emmanuel on loan for another year would be great, or just a Johan Emmanuel type player to kind of bridge that gap there. Not so much bringing someone in, but I think it would be good to establish kind of the 13 options in the squad, because if we now see Beetham and Grady as wingers, you've kind of got LaRue Milan and Harry Millard there, and obviously you've got Oshan Darwin-Lewis coming through. That are they going to be your three go-to options? And specifically as well, if either LaRue Milan or Harry Millard get injured quite early on in the season, it's a long-term injury, then say LaRue Milan gets injured, do we have to expect Harry Millard to lineup every week again, like we've had to rely on so many times. It'd be interesting. Imagine Ben Thomas can cover 13 as well, but it'd be interesting to kind of get an idea. I don't think there's any need to bring anyone in at 13, but it would be nice to kind of establish who the 13 options are and where the kind of pecking order lies there.
Yeah, you got Elijah Evans as well, I suppose,
Yeah.
looking around. But I agree, and like, it is a source of frustration. I think I mentioned it on the pod quite a lot that we bring these lads through, and we've seen that Evans play a couple of times, but we brought him on the wing, and it's like Steve mentioned earlier with John Mulvihill's ideal centre partnership being Jared Evans and Owen Lane. Owen Lane was another one who we brought in as a winger, and we just never moved him inside. Grady seems to be going that way as well. Elijah Evans played a lot on the wing so far. I just wonder, whether we just need to be brave at some point with a couple of these young guys and accept that it is a tough position and they're not going to go like 10 out of 10 every week from the start of moving into the position. But if we keep waiting too long, we're going to be stuck with a lot of wingers and still not a lot of outside centre options. Yeah, it is. That's the thing. You look at the squad and there's a lot of players who can. We've probably got more who can play 13 than we've ever had, but how many actually will is a big question. I think pre-season will be interesting in that regard, certainly. Right, that's the squad as we are. I think just to mention as well, there's already stuff for recruitment next season. I don't know, it seems far too early for that, but Sam Scott was mentioned as a potential loan signing this year. I think Steph Thomas said in Wales Online that's not going to happen for this year, but he is very, very high on the shopping list for a permanent move next summer. It seems he's out of contract at Bristol next summer, and hopefully we can offer him a good amount of first team game time, which might convince him to come back to Cardiff, having moved away initially to the Wasps Academy in the city of Oxford College when he was a 16-year-old, and then ended up at Bristol after the demise of Wasps. And Johan Emmanuel was one who was certainly mentioned the back end of last season. They were hoping to get him back on loan. The extension that he signed at Bath was apparently just an automatic 1-year trigger that all Bath Academy guys have got in their contracts. So he is out of contract at the next summer as well. So if they don't quite get him back on loan, I think we'd all be happy to see him sign permanently next summer as well, and just keep that flow of Cardiff. If Cardiff players do end up going elsewhere for college or university at 16, 17, but we get them back at 21, 22, that's not a bad situation to be in, I don't think. So be interesting to see how that goes as the season progresses. Off-field bit, just a bit of other news then that's not really worth commenting on, but some stuff that's come out. So pre-season fixtures are confirmed: Worcester away Saturday the 5th, and then Exeter at home on Saturday the 19th to warm Cornel van Zyl's side up for the season. And the other thing that happened while we were off, the Investec Champions Cup draw was made and confirmed. Cardiff have ended up with fixtures against Northampton away in October, Bath at home in December, which briefly looked like it may have been at the Principality Stadium, but is now all but confirmed for the Arms Park because of the 8 o'clock kickoff. Thanks to S4C for that one. And then we've got Stade Francais away and Montpellier at home in the double header in January. Steve, just quickly, is Bath still revenge? Are we still on the revenge?
Always. Bath is always the revenge game. I mean, there's even more reasons for wanting revenge because we should have beaten them the last time.
Yes,
but yeah. I still want revenge for that non-try or that try Craig Morgan scored, which was disallowed back in 1997, and I probably will to my dying day.
No matter how many times we beat them, it shall always be revenge. Good stuff. I think that'll be a great fixture, though. I know there was some backlash about the Millennium Stadium stuff, but a Saturday night under the lights against Bath, hopefully a full house there. That'll be a good one to circle on the calendar. Off-field stuff then. Unfortunately, while there's been a lot of news about the rugby stuff, there hasn't been a lot of news about the off-field stuff. I think we're still in pretty much the same position we were at the end of last season in terms of confirmed news. There's obviously been a lot of stuff in the media over the last 2-3 weeks or so, people calling for board resignations, the board actually putting out a statement which was pretty vociferous, I suppose, from their regards. But they've initially said that there'd be a June deadline to figure out how we're going to get from 4 to 3, which still is their aim. They then missed their own deadline, which nobody even asked them to set, but they missed it anyway, and set a new deadline of, I think, next March, which, I mean, if I could do that in work, just miss a deadline and then create a new one 10 months later, I mean, that'd be fantastic, but it doesn't seem to work anywhere else but the WRU on that front. But they say that they'll come together again in December and decide how they're getting from 4 to 3. What they have said, though, is that Dragons are going to be the East team and Cardiff are going to be the South team, which, I mean, we all knew, but they themselves were sort of saying, well, no, actually, the Scarlets could be the East team somehow, which, yeah, I don't know why they said that.
Yeah,
I think they probably, yeah, well, yes, of course. Have to play out off Landa Fields if they're going to do it. Yeah, very strange. I guess, Steve, the question from a Cardiff perspective is, are we any clearer on what sort of the short-term future is with WRU ownership, and what, even in terms of like governance, and have we got a board in place and anything like that?
Well, I mean, relatively speaking, we have some kind of short-term assurance because of the rather bizarre way in which they're awarding the licenses. So next to Ospreys and Scarlets, we have more stability. But as far as I understand it, they haven't really assembled a full board yet. There's a lot of questions about what the off-field leadership structure is going to be. There's a new chairman coming in to the WRU at some point. Will they take a different view? There's a lot of pressure being placed on the WRU board. If there's a wholesale changes at the WRU, or even a change in chief executive, are they going to have a different way of looking at the situation? So I'm sure Ospreys and Scars fans will say, well, we're in a much, we're in a much stronger position than them, but it still remains an incredibly unstable situation. There's the whole question of why did the WRU take us off the market when Martin Ryan and the members of his consortium are saying they're still interested? Why are the WRU leaving money on the table there? There's a lot of unanswered questions. I think that's the way to sum it up. A lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right to say that obviously Scarlets and Ospreys fans, their podcasts, I think if we were doing a Scarlets and Ospreys podcast, it would be just packed with what on earth happens to us next, and there'd certainly be more uncertainty. But yeah, it doesn't remove the fact that we don't really know what's happening at all with Cardiff at the moment, and what the next few years looks like. Fordey, just on a general level, there's obviously been a lot of calls for change at the top of WRU the last week. Does anyone retain any faith that, even before getting to the debate about what change might look like, that they can deliver any change at all, really, at this point?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think there's obviously been a lot in the news of former players blasting the WRU, and I think it's very easy to do that. And that's not me defending the WRU, because everything's really a mess, to be honest. You think this time last year it was quite set on two sides, and now here we are where it's three sides. I do wonder if there'll maybe be a completely different angle come this time next year. I'm not 100% sure about that, but yeah, it's just, there's a lot of questions that kind of need answering. And I think from a Cardiff point of view as well, under WRU ownership, what sort of ambition and investment is there compared to if Martin Ryan's lot had got in? It would be a completely different picture. And I agree with Steve that there is an element of assurance, but like you guys said, we kind of knew that, didn't we? Really. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what happens with this new chair coming in. Because I do recall a Scrum 5 podcast a few months back after, I think it was after the EGM, where Abby Tierney was asked, what if this new chair comes in and has a complete different viewpoint? And she was pretty stumped on it. So it'd be interesting if there is some magic person who comes in that has all the kind of qualifications and experience and just has a complete different viewpoint, and then the can gets kicked even further down the road. It's sometimes nice to not really think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, then I mean, some of the stuff that we're hearing down the grapevine about the way they're recruiting this new chairman and sort of the person that they're looking for is concerning at best, I think, with statements around we're not really interested in rugby experience and that sort of thing is, I get that you don't just want, Dave from down the road who watches a lot of Welsh rugby on telly, but it would be handy to have somebody who is at least somewhat aware of how Welsh rugby works and how the ecosystem exists. I think it certainly hasn't worked by going fully external with some of the appointments that they've made recently.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because I think it is healthy to have people coming completely from outside. But with the current setup, you've got a chief executive, recently departed chairman, who are both Welsh or have close Welsh ancestry, but no background in rugby. And then you've got a director of rugby who clearly has a lengthy history in the game, but is new to Welsh rugby to the extent where I think, didn't Reddin say he's surprised by how parochial everybody is? I think that you need to have at least one of those three people needs to understand Welsh rugby and have a background in it. And I'm not saying these are local jobs for local people, but at least one of those roles has to be filled by someone with a long history in Welsh rugby, I think.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I do worry that the instruction to the headhunters for this new WRU chairman has just been get somebody who we can kind of nudge around a bit as chairman rather than somebody who will hold us to account, which is really what the role of the chair should be. But we will wait and see. The other bizarre element of it, of course, is that Richard Collier was been out of that job 2 months now, I think, and they still haven't got anyone else in. And he gave them plenty, like a decent amount of notice. It wasn't a surprise on the last day. He sort of just went, actually, I'm not coming back tomorrow. There was a good few months of that he gave them. So yeah, we'll wait and see who comes in on that front, and who comes in as a Cardiff director. And I think we've got a chairman and an interim managing director at the moment. There seems to be some movement on the hunt for a CEO or replacement for Richard Holland, who popped back up, I noticed in the news the other day, as a St Andrews golf course, I think it was, or some sort of links course up in Scotland. So good for him to find something else. But we're I don't think we even announced his departure, to be honest. I think that's where Cardiff are. We haven't officially confirmed he's gone. So fingers crossed we'll have some news on that in the coming weeks anyway, and we'll discuss that as we do. At this point of the pod then, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, please feel free to like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're on. If you're watching us on YouTube, like the video and subscribe to the Wrap channel, as well as the Global Gainline sister channel. I think producer Lee has got us up to about 25 podcasts now across the network, and there's one starting this season covering the English Prem. So if you like minimal defence, lots of tries, and some slightly over the top TV coverage, then go and listen to a couple of those as well. Always good stuff coming out. Right, Rags Corner then is back for another season. They're the ones who got us underway with on-field action on Saturday as they welcome St Albans in the Danfish Derby to the Arms Park, having played at Tremorfa Park last pre-season. A fairly comprehensive win, I think it's fair to say, for the Blue and Blacks. It was 99-7 at the point the referee blew the whistle, which appears to have been some 6 or 7 minutes before the 80 minutes as well. I think wanting to avoid a Rovigo issue where the scoreboard might not have actually stretched to 100 if they'd gone over one more time. But a couple of, I'm not going to list everybody who scored, but a couple to mention. Obviously, Derry Cross scored the first one because, of course, Derry Cross scored the first try of the season for the Rags. And there was scores for under 18 scrum half George Thomas on debut, as well as Louis Fletcher, who's come in as a prop over summer, and Charlie Probert, who's an interesting name on the team sheet. He's played sort of 50 plus times for RGC, hard tackling open side flanker, still in his early 20s, is enrolled at Cardiff Met for ahead of September. So I wonder if we'll maybe see him in and around the Rag setup, and obviously I imagine he'll play Buck Super Rugby stuff for the Met, but it does seem like he might be appearing in first team training every now and again across pre-season as well to add a bit of resilience to the back row group. So we'll keep an eye on his progress. The full list of departures of the Rags last season was Christian Brook, Callum Donahue Proud, Gavin Parry, Ethan Phillips, Joe Williams and Steph Davis. And then they've announced 3 signings so far. Louis Fletcher, as I mentioned, a prop who can play on both sides. of the scrum. Harry Fry, a loosehead prop, brother of Ben, and then Sonny Greenman, a utility back, seems to be comfortable. 10 and 15 mainly, but can play on the wing as well. Who's come in from Hartpury University. And then, as well as Probert, there was two other guest names on Saturday who I thought were a bit interesting. Will Bennett at hooker, old Penarthians player, and has been at Hartpury as well, with hooker looking a little bit light at the moment in the Rag squad, as is scrum half, where Charlie Rainbird got an opportunity, who's been at Hartpury University as well, was in a wider Wales under-20 training squad season before last, I think, so and has played Gloucester under-18, so keep an eye on a couple of those names as maybe stepping up into the SRC this season as well. They play again, the Rags, in 2 weeks. They're going down to Brixham on August Bank Holiday weekend, which sounds more like a jolly than a pre-season friendly to me, but that's where they'll be playing their last game ahead of the SRC getting underway. And then the other on-field action that's kicked off is the Under-18s Regional Age Grade Championship. Cardiff beat the Dragons 53-38 to keep up their record of try bonus point victories carrying over from last season's regular season. Again, I'm not going to list all the try scorers, but I think the one to highlight was Devon Morris, the winger, scoring a hat-trick. He's in his first season at Under-18s, having just come out of school, and is already on a full academy deal at 16, 17, however old he is. So it looks like he's going to be one to keep an eye on for the next couple of seasons. They play Ospreys next at the Arms Park, 2:30 kickoff on Sunday. You can get in with a season ticket. I don't think they've sent the season ticket out yet, so how that works, I don't actually know in practice. But if you're around, go and watch that. A repeat of last season's Rag final, of course, which was decided by just the width of a post from a last gasp kick that missed for Cardiff. Final part of the podcast, then we'll have a look back on the international action that happened earlier in the summer. Wales with 3 tests and a non-cap game. They beat Barbarians 31-33, beat Fiji 24-39, and then lost 35-21 in Argentina and 43-0 in South Africa. Steve, a couple of Cardiff guys in action throughout the summer there. We saw plenty of the likes of Alex Mann, James Botham, Josh Adams as well, amongst a few others. What did we make of their performances in sort of a mixed window, I guess, Wales-wise?
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see Josh Adams get that try against the Barbarians, and I think probably answer a few critics slightly. I mean, you could call it a gift, but it's only a gift because he's chasing up the way he is. So he's kind of demonstrated that he's still a vital international winger and will carry on being a very useful player. I think James Botham has had a really big season for himself because he's, I think, really established himself as an international player now. And so he's further cemented that over the summer. Maybe a little disappointed not to see a few more Cardiff players involved, but then I think there are players in our squad who only really kind of hit their straps towards the end of the season. I'm thinking particularly about Tane Basham, who had a pretty slow start to the year, but was looking very, very good at the end of last season. I can see him getting a bit more involved with Wales next season if he maintains that form. Someone like Ewan Lloyd, even I think there's probably a place in the Wales squad for him and can win it. So yeah, I think looking at our league position, our international representation over the summer was maybe a little disappointing. But there's definitely a few players who can, I think, are going to become a bit more part of the conversation next season.
I'd add Jacob Beetham to that list as well. I thought he was a touch unlucky as well. And what did you think of Teddy Williams getting back in there? Obviously, second row is in a position of massive depth, and he'd had a long time out. Would it have been beneficial for him to stay at home and have a full pre-season, or is it just good to see him back involved?
It's great to see him back involved, and it's also great to see that he kind of hit the ground running, the way you kind of associate Talupi Faletau. Talupi Faletau always hits the ground running no matter how long he's been out, and it's great to see Teddy Williams do exactly the same. So yeah, I think prior to he came back for the Argentina game, prior to that game, I think I might have said, "Oh, just let him have a pre-season and hit the ground running for Cardiff." But no, they clearly timed it pretty well, because I think he was pretty impressive, particularly for a guy who'd been out for the majority of a year.
For the end of those summer games roughly marked the end, the first year of Steve Tandy being around the role. I think he was announced in the June, but didn't start till September. But it certainly brought the curtain down on his first season as Wales head coach. Won a couple, lost a couple. I think we finished 10th in the world rankings at the moment, up from 12th. What have we made of his first couple of months in charge?
It's kind of expected, I think. Like, you can take a lot of positives from the wins against Japan, Italy, and Fiji, but realistically, all three games are at home. You should kind of expect to win those games against those opposition. And I think it's frustrating then looking at stuff like the England game in the Six Nations and South Africa game in the autumn and South Africa game just now in the summer, that those games are almost games where you've lost before a ball's even been kicked. And I know that particularly South Africa, it's a class above. Like, you can't, with our pack compared to their pack, you cannot compete really. And the lack of platform when it comes to some of the scrums from the South Africans, were we were getting driven 10 meters back on our own scrum, got driven back over our own line at one point. It's always going to be difficult to compete, but we don't seem to have that kind of punch that even when an obvious underdog plays a world-class side, there'll often be a glimpse. You think about various World Cup games over the years where a New Zealand takes on, like in Namibia, there'll often be that moment where there'll be a good try scored by Namibia, and it seems we don't even have that, which is really frustrating. But I think it's, with regards to the future of Tandy, I don't think there's anyone else really you could get in realistically. And I guess it's just about kind of trying to bridge that gap there, especially with the World Cup. I think it's something like 11 games now until the first World Cup game. And I think it's naive to think that we can go up against some of these teams in the Six Nations and get wins, but it's trying to get as much positives as possible so that we can establish a good foundation, kind of establish those players who start each week in one position, those kind of combination of the centres, so that there's a good foundation there come the World Cup in Australia.
I wonder what you made of the attack forward. Just obviously it's Matt Sherratt who runs it, somebody we know quite well on this pod. It came in for a lot of criticism. It obviously hasn't fired really. There was sort of glimpses of it towards the end of the Six Nations, but we didn't see too much of the back play in particular during the summer internationals. Like, we know he can coach the backs to play well. We've seen it firsthand. But what is it that isn't quite working for Wales and for Matt Sherratt, I suppose, particularly at the moment?
I'm not sure if it's just a step up to international rugby, because as much as that's possible, you kind of see when he came in as interim head coach initially, there was some pieces of play like that Scotland game up in Edinburgh where some of the tries we were scoring were fantastic. But I don't know if it's just the kind of the link-up play, whether Joe Hawkins at 12 necessarily works. I think we do look a better team, despite all the shit he gets. I think we do look better when Costello starts at 10. That Scotland game in the Six Nations, the kind of the width he gets on the ball, it probably suits Matt Sherratt style play a bit better. But yeah, there's probably something lacking. But I think it does just boil down a bit to the lack of a good platform from the pack, which it's definitely improved. Like, when you have players such as Rhys Carey that seem to have more of a license to carry, then you've got a lot better platform there. But I still think we're often second best in that department.
Yeah, it's that centre partnership, I think, that's going to be the debate a long time. It's moved on a bit from certain positions where we've seen for many years, like who starts at 10 and all that, who starts at hooker. Whereas now, there's so many different opinions on even individually, who the best 12 and who the best 13 is. And then the argument changes again about who the best actual duo is as well in there. I think generally it's accepted Eddie James probably does get in there somewhere, but then, yeah, do you stick with this second playmaker? Do you bring a Max Llewellyn or bring Bradley in as a real just like head down arse up kind of guy and give you some go forward? And yeah, and then there's a question of, if you just brought a bigger inside centre, does that solve the problem, or do we just get punted back with a different guy at 12 basically and have no gain line again? Yeah, I do wonder how much attacking work they actually did over the summer. It didn't look like a test window that really suited Wales in terms of, I think a lot of the players who aren't based in Wales didn't come in till very late, despite the gap between the end of the season and the start of that test window. The Reg 9 window was literally that first week before the Fiji game, so maybe that didn't help. And then obviously we know about the travelling. I think they have 3 training sessions or something total in the weeks leading up to Argentina and South Africa, which, yeah, that's less than ideal. And if only we were Ireland and we could have complained and made Argentina play in South Africa or something like that, and reduced our travelling. But yeah, it just looks clunky at the moment, doesn't it? It's like proper. You were right against South Africa. They didn't even look like scoring. A couple of the times we got into their 22, and like, there is no confidence in this Wales team that they know how to actually get over the line in any facet. They can't pick and go. They can't maul. They can't go wide. They just are hoping for South African to basically make such a glaring error that we can jump in without them noticing. But yeah, it was a bit disappointing, certainly. And yeah, it's tough watching somebody like Jockey get so much criticism, because we know what a good coach he is and what a good guy he is, but it's also difficult to defend the stats, which don't read very well in terms of line breaks and tries scored. The other thing that was going on internationally, of course, over the summer was the under-20s playing the Junior World Championship out in Georgia. They had a much better tournament than they've had in recent years. They beat Georgia, the hosts, and Uruguay. Narrowly fall into South Africa in the pool stage to get through to the 5th to 8th place bracket. Beat Australia in a quite bizarrely dramatic game in the first round of that, before going on to fall to Scotland and finish 6th ultimately. Steve, lots of talent in that team. I thought lots of excitement. Players that you think could step up, whether Cardiff or otherwise, I guess, over the next few seasons?
I mean, purely from a Cardiff point of view, I thought that Wales under-20 showing was really positive, because, I mean, we know about Tom Bowen, obviously. Steph Emmanuel strengthened his case to start starting regularly next season, and I think he probably will. He looks so classy. But I thought Ruben Cummings was a little bit of a revelation.
Reece.
Sorry, Reece Cummings. He's so new to me, I don't even know what his name is. I thought Reece Cummings was a bit of a revelation, because I hadn't really seen too much of him. I sort of considered him someone maybe a little bit far down the pecking order, but I thought he was absolutely outstanding. Some of the tries he took, finishing, and all-round game. I mean, he looked like someone who could play URC sooner rather than later, because obviously we need another winger or another fullback. But he looks like he can be a really good option. And Ocean Darwin Lewis, again, like, I would have no qualms like seeing him play a couple of URC games next season. I'm sure we'll hand over to Fordey for the ground half chat and Tom Howe, but he looks unreal, an unreal prospect, a hooker.
Yeah, I mean, 40 half the squad was Glentarf, so I assume there was like wild celebrations among the alumnus every time they took the field. But no, I mean, there's a lot of talent in that squad, isn't there? And Howe obviously leads it into, like, we've seen some of the articles that have come out over the summer putting him in like top 10 prospects in the world and all this sort of thing. He is obviously a very good player. And I guess the question then is, do you think we could see him in the first team even this season, despite him only being 18 or so?
It really wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, because it seems he's got a lot of hype around him. I think there is probably a risk of, you don't want a player in that position being exposed to professional rugby so quickly, especially if he was to play against some of the South African teams and it's kind of a scrum going in reverse. You don't want him to get any kind of bad, long-lasting injuries. But you think when you've got someone like that, and Wales is a country that doesn't tend to produce a lot of the hookers do tend to be almost converted flankers at times. So to have a kind of natural hooker there, I think there's a lot of hype around Tom Howe, and I think there was talk of he was like a travelling reserve for one of the games last season while he was still in school. So I think more stuff like that would be fantastic for his future. And if there's an injury before the game kicks off, then that's not a bad person to have come in as a replacement last minute. But yeah, I think you just need to manage him carefully. I've seen apparently the WRU have kind of marked him as a potential player to go to the World Cup in Australia. And you do wonder, is that a bit too soon? But when you see him play, there's a lot to like about him. But again, you look at someone like Morgan Morse at 17 was clearly being raved about and clearly had a huge ceiling and still does, but his kind of development hasn't quite matched what we probably expected in a position where you could probably get away with it a bit more. So I think time will tell, but yeah, he's got to have a run of some sort of games in the URC next season, and it'll be interesting to see if he gets involved in pre-season as well.
Yeah, I think the thing with Howe is, well, firstly to say he walked past me at a game last season in the bar. He is a massive bloke, like considering he's 18. Just like he's what 6'2", 6'3", something, but he's wide as he is tall as well. He's just a large human. But I wonder if maybe they even. I think he'll get plenty of game time at hooker for the Rags. There's obviously at this moment in time, it's only him and Alan Rees who are the hookers in the Rag squad that we know about, unless they've signed this Will Bennett from the weekend or they've got somebody else lined up from somewhere. But so there's plenty of game time there for him. I wonder if maybe the option a little bit to get him involved in the first team might be as a, if we had a 6-2 bench, could he go on as a back rower almost? He's obviously a very physical ball carrier. The risk there is, I seem to remember Alfie Barberi coming through as a hooker, and they brought him in as a back rower just to test him out. And then, sort of as we were talking about earlier with Cardiff's 13s, he picks a position, is very good there, never moves. But it's just to get him on the field without the pressure of the line out throw in, and to get a feel of first team rugby, it could be an option for him. But yeah, I mean, what a huge talent, and we just don't produce players that big really in Wales. So that's I
mean, if he does end up coming through as a number 8, that's really no bad thing, because it's not as if we're overrun with big number 8s either. But I suppose the other thing is there's still only 3 senior hookers.
Yeah,
it's still there's just Dave Hughes, Liam Belcher, Evan Lloyd, who himself ended up playing a bit back row at the end last season. So, I mean, just by lack of numbers in the senior squad, he could have just ended up playing by default. And yeah, you do worry about it, because we do have this kind of culture in Wales of, this is a really serious prospect, let's throw him straight into senior rugby or straight into international rugby. And I think history tells us it's not always the best idea. So yeah, but I mean, we got good coaches, so I'm sure they'll do the right thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the most annoying people are when we throw these talents in, and then there's someone waiting. There'll be someone waiting as soon as Howe loses one line. Oh, he's crap. Get him back off.
Yeah. It's that build him up and knock him down mentality. I don't think it's helpful.
No, not helpful at all. And I think unfortunately those people think they're just giving really good insight, but it's just slagging off for the sake of slagging off, unfortunately, and it doesn't do anyone any service, because it doesn't make you look like you know anything about rugby either. It just makes you look like a bit of a knob, to be honest. Just generally on the under-20 squad, I just wanted to highlight a problem position for Wales, but I thought some of our locks looked really, really promising. Obviously, from a Cardiff perspective, Tom Cottle played quite a bit. He was injured in the second half of last season, but I think there's certainly a good player there. He's obviously an accomplished line-out caller. He's a big physical guy. He's got a bit of skills to him as well. But around him, Will Evans at the Scarlets looks like, also in a similar vein to Tom Howe, just a large man, which is no bad thing for a type 5 forward, and certainly his ball carrying. There was a bit of the Will Rowlands about it, just the way he sort of burrows over people and makes ground out of nowhere. I thought Luke Evans, former Cardiff man, now at Exeter, who is still, I don't know for definite, but I would imagine is still eligible to play for the 20s next season as well. But he looks like a really good prospect, and I also like the look of, I think there was two Oshan Williamses as well. I think it's the Bristol's Oshan B. Williams, I think he is. But he obviously had a bit of a nightmare in that last game against Scotland. I think twice he lost and dropped the ball over the line. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that he had a very good Six Nations and into the World Rugby Under-20 Championship as well. It's slightly different. The other guy's a little bit more physical and a bit more of the set piece. He was a little bit more mobile, got around the pitch a bit better, and contributed in the wider channels. Hopefully he'll learn to hold on to the ball in future. But I think probably the best overall group of under-20 locks that we've seen for a good couple of years, whereas previously it's sort of just been dribs and drabs of one player here and there. And I think you look at some guys like Johnny Green and Nick Thomas and Oshan Thomas, who the last few years we haven't seen them again really since they've played for the 20s. They've disappeared into the system of whatever club they're in, and hopefully these guys are able to kick on a bit at least anyway. Right, I think that's pretty much us for this week as a summer catch up, unless there's any more there. All good.
Probably just to mention Sean Davis for the under-20s. It's another name worth noting. He looked like he could step up as well. Classy player. Yeah,
similar, I suppose, to Howe in that we've only got 3 senior scrum halves. So if there is an injury or two, he's going to have to be thrust
and
in.
another Grant half player.
Of course.
Yes.
The Grant half 15 moves a step closer at senior level. Well, that was us for catching up of summer stuff. We'll be back to regular programming now every week until the season gets going. We've got a little special next week to nod to the 150th season, as we'll try and build a 15 across Cardiff's 150-year history. We'll have to put some parameters in there, so it's not just all recent players or Steve popping up with obscure players from the 1800s.
Well, to balance out everyone just picking Dan Fish and Ray Lee.
So we'll come to you on social media for your thoughts on that. Keep an eye out on that ahead of next week. But until then, Fordey, thank you very much.
Cheers, Dan.
And Steve, thank you very much.
Cheers, Dan.
And thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye.